Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Tuesday, August 4th, 2026, in the space and time continuum. The reason that I'm waiting until Tuesday is because we've had work being done here in the studio / house we live in, and there was a lot of noise going on. So today, there's nobody here doing that. So I waited an extra day just for that reason. And then, sure enough, some new reporting comes in just this morning. Very important Epstein files information, for one thing. Senator Ron Wyden, you may have heard, Senator Ron Wyden was doing an investigation on the banks that were working with Jeffrey Epstein. He's been doing this investigation now for 3 years. And some results are now being released. And it puts J.P. Morgan Bank, Deutsche Bank, and Bank of America under hard scrutiny. They were covering up for Jeffrey Epstein. They were covering up for the sex trafficking. It's clear. Not only that, but during Senator Ron Wyden's investigation, he was asking for information on these banks and on this different information, and the Trump administration would not give him the information. They were trying to block the investigation. Now, I just said he's been doing it for 3 years. He got information before the Trump administration came in, but he tried at least 3 times, starting in the beginning of 2025. I think in March was the first time. That's, of course, when Trump took over the White House and tried to block the investigation. Also, Senator Ron Wyden did an interview on 60 Minutes months ago now, a few months ago. I think it was in 2026, though, because he was finishing up, coming out with this information. And CBS, as you know, has been taken over by, I think the name is Barry Weiss, who's a woman who's a total maggot. She took over CBS and is basically turning it into Fox News. She's firing everybody. She fired their best top decades-long correspondents in 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes is the premier news show for, since the 70s at least. And this woman is ruining that show. So Ron Wyden gets invited onto CBS to do an interview on 60 Minutes, and then they decide to not air it. It was scheduled to be aired. CBS didn't air it, and they fired the woman who did the interview of Senator Ron Wyden. This information apparently just coming out this morning, and it just shows you, what are they so afraid of? If they weren't afraid of anything, if Trump was going to be vindicated by the Epstein files, of course they would have been released immediately, like years ago. But anyway, now, if you have people who then point out, like if you're at a party or something, and there's, these people who do this argument of, well, why did Biden not release the Epstein files? What's he covering up? Biden didn't release the Epstein files because while the whole 4 years Biden was in the White House, there was the trial and investigations on Ghislaine Maxwell. And he would have been interfering into an investigation and trial hearings. So that's why Biden didn't release it. Now, if this information has been available since basically the 1990s, well, then we've got questions by other administrations as well. And none of it's good. None of it's good. But for whatever reasons now, and there are many that we can name, but the information is starting to come out, and I think it will come out in its entirety. I think a lot of, for instance, the heads of these banks are very heavily implicated. I was going to say implemented. Maybe that too. But they're very heavily implicated in this report that Senator Ron Wyden is now releasing. So that's something that just happened this morning. And we also have some brand new information about polling that's really interesting. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to just flip through a few things. I'm not sure if you've heard, there's a lot of information about our weapons being depleted. General Alexis Grinkowicz, he came out with this information. Now, it's obvious that both Kegbreath and Trump have been trying to cover this up. And they've been lying about that, they're going to hit Iran hard and they have everything they need to do whatever they want for however long they want to. And this general, who knows if he's going to get fired now, he felt compelled to come out with this information. So now it's been released. For instance, our THAAD and Patriot systems, those are the systems that shoot down missiles that are coming at our bases. The Arab Dome is falling. That means those systems, THAAD and Patriot, they form a dome because they protect our bases in the region of Iran. Now, you've been hearing that our bases have been getting hit. They've also been lying about casualties. There's a story about how in the one hit where people died, and I did a story about a woman who was, couldn't get help and ended up bleeding out because there was no medical help available to her on the base. People with head injuries, brain injuries and things, they were told not to go to the emergency room, not to go to the hospital because they didn't want the numbers to be reported. So medical help was denied by the Pentagon, by Kegbreath, to injured military personnel. Our THAAD systems, estimated pre-war inventory, THAAD was at 360. Now there's 190 left, about half. Our Patriot systems, there was 2,330 before the war. Now there's 1,000, basically. Now, delivery timelines in months. THAAD takes 53 months to produce new THAAD systems. Patriot takes 42 months. Okay? That's years. That's 3, 4, 5 years. Also, the THAAD systems are $15.5 million apiece. Patriots, $3.9 million apiece. So how much money has been being spent? Our Tomahawks was at 3,100 before the war. Now it's at 1,000. Those take 47 months to reproduce. And there are some other systems here that were mentioned by the general. So it's pretty dire. He's talking about our capability to be ready for any type of crisis. General Alexis Grinkowicz, the top U.S. commander in Europe, has warned the Pentagon that he no longer has enough Navy destroyers to keep protecting Israel from Iranian ballistic missile attacks while also meeting U.S. defense needs. The destroyers, which have intercepted missiles targeting Israel, are stretched by operations in the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and around Iran, while maintenance issues have further reduced availability. One of the Kegbreath's jobs is to maintain the fleet, and he hasn't been doing it apparently. So we've got, too many things in repair, not to mention Trump and Kegbreath using this stuff like it's toys. So that's why then Trump again tacoed out this weekend. He was saying, we're going to hit him hard, maybe tomorrow. No, then he pulled back. He said, I want to make a deal. We're going to talk to him first. Okay, yeah. We know the real story, idiot. So I wanted to report that to you. I'm not sure how many details you knew. You might have heard those stories. Another story is that Capital One has shut down apparently hundreds of Trump bank accounts. I don't know how many he had, but this happened in 2021. And the reason this happens is because banks have to cover their own ass. If somebody's doing something like, say, money laundering, and the bank knows it, then the bank is implicated along with the criminal who's doing it. And the terms and conditions of any bank account is that the bank can decide to give you your money back and say, we don't want to bank with you. We don't want to be your partner in banking. So here's your money back. Don't keep it in our bank. We don't want to have anything to do with you. And they have people watching for what weird things might be going on to make sure that they're not implicated in some sort of crime. So they have their own systems of keeping an eye on accounts. And the reason they, quote unquote, debanked Trump is because they saw evidence of money laundering. Of course, he's a mobster. There were some other, of course, like conservative maggots that have been, quote unquote, debanked. And now they're talking about, we need legislation, like Steve Miller and all these people are talking about, we need legislation to protect the weaponization of the financial system, now is what they're calling it. The same way that, the weaponization of the Justice Department against people who went and tried to kill cops at the Capitol. Now, the actual thing that's happening is the Justice Department is trying to do its job. If you don't want to be targeted by the Justice Department, don't do the crime. If you don't want to be debanked by the bank, don't money launder. So the reason we're finding it out now is because Trump tried to sue Capital One, claiming that this is all political. It's because he's a Republican and it's because he was president. That's why they're debanking him like they're debanking all right-wing maggots. And that is not the case. And Capital One had to stick up for themselves and put out their information that led them to believe that Trump was money laundering. That's how we found out. Again, Trump, he brings this stuff out himself. There's also a bunch of his financial records that had to be produced because he's trying to sue the BBC over in the UK. You may have heard about that story as well. We wouldn't have seen those financials of Trump's if Trump didn't try and sue the BBC over some crybaby BS over there. Also, another Republican death in, I think, the Senate, or else in Congress at least. Kay Granger from Texas. I hadn't heard of her. Apparently, she disappeared about 4 or 5 months ago. I didn't hear about that. Apparently, she was put in a home because she was dying and couldn't, I don't know if she had dementia or whatever, but she was not in her right mind. They had to put her away, basically, until she died. She was in her mid to late 80s. So all of these Republicans, at least, I mean, there are a lot of old Democrats too, but, we got Kay Granger in Texas. We got Lindsey Graham. He was only 71. That's relatively young in Congress. Of course, Mitch. Now, some interesting information about Mitch McConnell that was dug up by a woman who's been reporting on the Mitch McConnell thing since day one in June 14th or something. The 911 call and the calls between the people who were working on him show that they had to try and resuscitate him. He had a heart attack. He was basically died, and they tried to resuscitate him. And by the time they were taking him out to the ambulance, there were no sirens or anything. They weren't in a big hurry. So that's why a lot of people thought he died. So we've been hearing that he's in rehab, right? Rehabilitation. Now, there's a kind of rehabilitation that's called passive therapy. And that is a rehabilitation where if the person is in a brain dead coma or past coma and brain dead, and they're still keeping the person alive, although really they're dead because their brain is dead, but their heart is still pumping. This passive therapy, they just move the muscles so that the muscles don't deteriorate. That's what that therapy, that rehabilitative therapy, passive rehabilitative therapy, is just treating a body that basically, for all purposes, is dead, because the brain is dead. You're not coming back. This makes the most sense to me, this story. So that's what I think is going on. I don't know. Everybody's got their own opinion of that. They couldn't fool us with those fake pictures and everything. So that's some of the news items, fun or not, that have been going on. There's also stories about weirdness over in Morocco. You may have heard about that. If you haven't, look it up. But when we come back, we're going to have a lot of fun. I want to talk about what's coming in these elections and where we are now and the changes that are going on in the Democratic Party, and why, instead of being worried about it like mainstream media is trying to get us to do, we should be elated about it. And we're going to talk about all those positive, fun things after a short break. You're listening to A Satellite View. We'll be right back. And we're back on A Satellite View. Find our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com. Sign up for the email list. Go to YouTube and do a search for Satellite View Podcast. You'll find our YouTube channel. And subscribe. It's free. You can also find me at Todd Mikkelson on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on Instagram, and then on Facebook. Our page is actually under at Mikkelson Politics. So you can go find more information about this show at those places. But let's get back into this, because I'm looking forward to this information that I gathered, some of which I only gathered this morning, only came out this morning. People are talking about how the Democrats' chances are. In the Senate, they're saying, I don't know, it's going to be real close and real tight. And, well, okay. Here are some Senate polls, and this is Fox News polling. Okay? In Georgia, John Ossoff, who's doing a great job and becoming a rising star. John Ossoff is beating his opponent under the name of Collins by 13 points. It's Ossoff 56, Collins 43. That's Georgia. We have to hold that seat. North Carolina, the Democrat is up +9. Cooper, 53%. Whatley, 44%. In Ohio, now that would be a gain. North Carolina would be kind of an amazing, step forward. There's also talk about South Carolina. That's Lindsey's seat. Are the Republicans going to keep Lindsey's seat? Trump says he was poised to win. Well, I don't think so. Ohio, this is a seat that we would be winning back. Right now is held by a Republican. Sherrod Brown is running, and he is up +8. 53-45 in Ohio, the Democrats are winning. In Iowa, the Democrat is up +4. This is Iowa. The Democrat Turek is beating the Republican Hinson 50-46 right now. And Barack Obama just made a big video along with this guy who is a Paralympic gold medal winner. He's in a wheelchair, and they were playing basketball in this video, having a conversation. And Turek, at one point, I heard a little bit of it, asks Obama, well, you won this. Obama won Iowa, and it was a huge, huge deal. Nobody thought that could happen in the election in 2008. I think also in 2012. I'm not sure about that one. But Obama's saying, I know a little bit about winning a place like Iowa. And Turek is like, well, so there was a lot of hope back in those days that you ran, and there was enough hope here in Iowa that ended up making you win in that election, a statewide election. What do you think that's at now? And Obama says, that's what I think is happening right now. So this is Obama, who won Iowa in a statewide election, running for president, of course, and he's telling the guy running for the Senate for the Democrats, yes, I feel the same things going on in Iowa right now that was going on back when I won. All right? So, this doom and gloom, and I mean, there are, in Texas, we have a great chance. In Maine, we have a great chance. I have already talked about those places. I haven't talked about these other places. Iowa. All right? That's just incredible. In October 2018, when the Democrats took over the House and the Senate, the Democrats were up plus 11 at this point in time. This is a Quinnipiac poll. So October 2018, in the late summer, leading into the midterm elections, where the Democrats just took everything, it was a blue wave. The Democrats were up by 11 points. It was the Democrats 50 to the Republicans 39. Right now, July of 2026, which is now, of course, Democrats 53, Republicans 31. That's a spread of 22 points. The Democrats are up 22 points right now in the trend among independent voters. Okay, independent voters, one of the best. I mean, if you have the independents, you win. So that's some of that polling. And I want to play you some more about polling. I'm going to play you something. This was a fun clip that just was put out about maybe 2 hours ago. This is who you've heard me talk about a lot on this show. This is Ben Meiselas on the Midas Touch Network. He's one of the founders. I've told you to, go there and look this up. This is where I get a lot of information because they report on things that the mainstream media doesn't report on. This is a story about how Fox News right now, last night, again, so if I would have recorded this yesterday, I couldn't have even reported on this particular story. Last night, Laura Ingraham was trying to get Democrats and independents to go along with them on Fox to fight against the crazy Democrats, the communists, which we're going to talk about that whole line of thinking in a moment. But I want to play you this. I think this is a pretty fun clip that Ben Meiselas just put out this morning.
State regime media, which calls itself Fox News, is in panic mode as Donald Trump is crashing in the polls. Let's just take a look, though, at what they're panicking over. Let's take a look at the latest polling data from The Economist, which aggregates some of the major polls out there. What is Donald Trump polling in Florida? Net negative 13? What about Pennsylvania, swing state? Net negative 24? What about South Dakota? Net negative 10 in South Dakota? Okay, South Carolina, Lindsey Graham state. What are you doing there? Net negative 25? Okay. What about Texas? Trump is net negative 20 points there. Okay. Alaska, net negative 15 points. Ohio, net negative 24 points. All right, you get the drift. I could keep on going on and on and on. But Donald Trump is at historic lows. I mean, lower than he was after the January 6th insurrection, lower than Nixon at the time that Nixon resigned. So what are they doing on state regime media with that as background? Laura Ingraham, as I noted at the outset, says Democrats, independents, work with us. Join us. Are you supposed to pretend to be news? Join us. Work with us. We're a nice cult. We only drink the Kool-Aid every single night. Okay, watch what Laura Ingraham says. What a pathetic, vile thing she is. Here, play this clip.
So clear-eyed Democrats, independents, work with us. We'll form a coalition. We'll stop the madness. Then once they're ground into the dust, you can go back to being a party that once had a reasonable core.
Now, I want to play you another clip by Laura Ingraham because this is classic what they call projection. Okay, this is on Fox News, Laura Ingraham.
They're going to promise prosecutions of Trump and his family. Then ICE officials, anyone who worked for ICE, then the entire system will be put on trial before it's ultimately dismantled.
Okay, let's do that. That's what we want. That sounds like a great plan. And it's also what Trump and the MAGAs and Fox News has been trying to do. So that's why I'm calling it projection. It's classic projection. I mean, and pathetic as well. Yeah, we're not going to make fun of Laura Ingraham and her voice right now. And, there was a radio show that talked about how she would sound during sex. Okay, you can only make, okay, I'm not going to go there. But now I want to talk about the reason they're so scared of this is because the DSA candidates. Now, I hadn't heard of the DSA before a couple months ago. And it stands for Democratic Socialist something that starts with A, association, something like that. And now Bernie Sanders has been calling himself openly a Democratic Socialist for decades. And then he goes on to say what it means. And everything he says about, health care, universal health care, child tax credits, all kinds of things like that, are things that 80 or more % of Americans want. So we need to stop calling them Democratic Socialists because people don't understand that and it scares some people or they get the wrong idea. And Fox and Trump is trying to purvey that idea even more so by saying that these people are communists, which is hilarious because that stopped working in the 1950s. And they're trying it again because they think it's going to help them in these elections where I just showed you and played for you polling. Here's what I want to tell you about these people that are winning in these primaries. A couple things. First of all, the mainstream media is trying to say that, it's a bad thing that these very progressive candidates are winning in these primaries. And they're winning overwhelmingly. In Wisconsin, so much money thrown at the moderate, quote unquote, Democrat, and, something like 10-1 funding. And still the progressive is what I'm going to call it. The super progressive candidate still overwhelmingly is ahead or already won. I'm not sure. I think that election might be going on tonight. Another one that's going on is in Michigan. And the progressive is way ahead, even though it's, again, like 10-1 funding. The person who's running against him, the quote-unquote moderate Democrat, got an influx of something like $70 million from outside money. And then this guy, he's not accepting money like that. So he's still winning by, like 15 points or more. These people are just blowing it out of the water. And the mainstream media is trying to say, this is really going to hurt the Democrats in the main election. No, okay. These people in the primaries, the voters in the primaries, are the same voters for the general election. And Democrats are turning out in record numbers in these primaries this year. And Republicans are not turning out at all in these primaries this year. That's going to again happen in the general election. The Republicans no longer want to support this craziness. The Democrats want the Democrats to do stuff. And the things that these super progressive candidates are talking about doing, while they're not taking any outside PAC or corporate money, are things that 80 to 90 or to more, I think, % of all Americans want. So, of course, we don't need to be nervous because, that we're hurting our chances. No, the people who are winning on the Republican side, not Glenn Paxton, that was a guitar player for Alice Cooper Band. Ken Paxton, the horrible criminal, indicted criminal on the Republican side. There are mugshots. That's who they're picking. And they think we're hurting our chances by going with Tallarico, who I played what he had to say a few weeks ago. Anyway, so no, we do not need to worry about these things because the voters of that state want these candidates, and they are going to again show up in record numbers to vote in the main election. The mainstream media makes it sound like it's a national election for each of these candidates. No, these are Senate seats, and only that state can vote for them. The mainstream media thinks you're an idiot, but you're not. So here's an example, a short example. This is the candidate in Michigan, the super progressive candidate in Michigan. His name is Abdul El Sayed, and this was the election actually is tonight, the primary election. His opponent did not perform very well at this debate that just happened, I think, on Thursday night. So less than a week before the election, there was a debate. Here is a question and an answer given to and by Abdul El Sayed.
I think this is really a poignant question. Dr. El Sayed, I'll begin with you. What is the number one thing Senate Democrats are failing to do right now that you would do differently?
Well, number one, I just think the filibuster itself is anti-democratic. And we had an opportunity to break the filibuster. Now, let me just talk about what the filibuster is. The filibuster is a process by which all of the Senate can hide behind one senator who wants to filibuster, which requires a 60-vote threshold to break. And that means that you need 60 votes to pass something when it really should just be the majority number of votes. I oppose the filibuster. I think the filibuster has been anti-democratic for a lot of reasons. And once you get past that, we have the opportunity to get money out of politics to take on Citizens United. We have the opportunity to put money back in pockets by doing things like passing the PRO Act to stand with unions like the UAW who've endorsed us. We have the opportunity to start changing and enforcing our antitrust policies so a few corporations can't pick your pocket at every turn. We have the opportunity to tax billionaires their wealth, and we have the opportunity to finally guarantee every single person in this country health care through Medicare for all. But we've got to get the democracy part of it right. And right now, the biggest risks to our democracy are the filibuster, it's anti-democratic at the Senate, and money in politics. The attack ads that you've seen probably in the last commercial break itself that change our political system. When you ask $60 million to come into a race for you and then say that somehow you're electable, I think you don't quite understand what electability means. If you need a $60 million crutch, you probably can't be elected on your own terms. So I would just say that you should probably, if you really want to beat Mike Rogers, find the candidate who is electable without having to ask for a $60 million crutch to do it.
Wow. Okay. Concise, no stuttering going on. Just like Mamdani when you see him speak. And a lot of these really progressive candidates, the reason they're not stuttering is because they're not trying to remember what they're supposed to say. They're telling you honestly their true answer to the question. So they don't have to fumble around and go, oh, what did my campaign manager tell me that I should say if I got asked this question? They're not thinking like that. They're answering honestly. And it is so refreshing. Is that something? Does that guy look or sound scary to you? I agree with everything he says. I've been saying for decades that if we get money out of politics, we can do things like tackle gun safety. When the Biden administration put forth the child tax credit at the beginning of his administration, within 1 year, child poverty was erased by 45%. All right? Those are the type of things that these people are talking about. What? They're the same type of... right now I'm watching a really good documentary on FDR. These are the things that FDR did that made for the most prosperous economy for decades to come in the United States. That's what these candidates are bringing. Not to mention, they're young. They're not going to die next week. You know, they have got energy. They can do these things. People like AOC, she's been talking like this for a long time. And now these other candidates are rising behind her. Bernie Sanders is behind all of these candidates, even though he's 80-something years old. He knows he's been trying to work on this stuff for decades, you know, but he was the only guy yelling about it. So this is a really great wave. This, with these polling numbers that I just went through, this is the time to do and get what we really want. What we really want. Not what we think can win, but what we really want. Now, a lot of people think Kamala Harris is a mainstream Democrat. Her campaign was completely hamstrung by the Biden administration. She could not talk honestly about where she is on things. She just this last week again was speaking at a forum. She said we need to revisit reforming the Supreme Court. I've been saying for years and years, I'm not the only one. I'm not trying to take credit for these things when I say I've been saying this for years. Of course, I'm not the only one saying this, but there are, back when they came up with 9 Supreme Court justices, there were 9 circuit courts. Sorry, I'm stuttering. Now there are 13 circuit courts. Shouldn't there be 13 Supreme Court justices? That's how we argue about this. We don't say we're packing the court. We don't say, oh, we're trying to, lean it back to the Democrats. No, we're trying to maintain it the way it should have been over the last 100 years. It was in the 1890s. There were 9 circuit courts. Now there are 13. It was decided in the 1890s, well, we should have 9 Supreme Court justices, 1 for each circuit court. Why do we not have 13 now? That makes sense, doesn't it? I think everybody would agree with that logic. Kamala Harris also said, she's talking about a lot of these same things. Money in politics. Relooking at ICE. ICE was formed after 9/11. It was supposed to be temporary. So Kamala Harris is, her real views on Israel, if we're going to be giving them money and weapons, we at least have to tell them what they can and can't do with those things. She was saying that a while ago. Anyway, I think Kamala Harris is also a very progressive candidate, but she wasn't allowed to be when she was the vice president of the current president. She couldn't really go against him when she was running for president. She was put in an impossible situation, and she was an incredible candidate. And you know that I am rooting for her all the time. Her as president and all these people in the Senate and in the House, we can build the America that you and I really want. We can really do real things to help real people, not just the oligarchs, real people. We can make this government work for the people, just like FDR did. So, all right, I've kept you long enough. I hope this was a little bit more fun for you. I'm pretty elated at where we are right now. I am very optimistic. Of course, it's a dull headache to watch Trump spinning out and doing all of his fraud and, all this stuff. Sometimes that's actually even fun because he's going so crazy now that it's like, whoa, this is like a clown show. But I know that part sucks. But what's coming up and being built solidly underneath that, so that when that is thrown off, the way Laura Ingraham just said, when those people are totally stomped out. Of course, she was talking in the opposite direction. That's why it's called projection. But when the whole Trump regime is completely gone, this is what is being built underneath it, that's going to rise underneath it. Kamala Harris talks about we cannot just try and fix things. We need to rebuild, and we need to start thinking about what that is. This is Kamala Harris saying this. I and other people have been saying it too, but Kamala Harris says these same things. So don't think of her as a moderate Democrat who wants to go back to the old ways. She kept saying, we will not go back. We're not going back. She wants to go forward as well, as do all these candidates, as do I do, and I believe you do too. So I hope this was good information for you. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. I will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.